Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 135 of the It's the Pictures podcast. My name is John Gilpatrick, and joining me, as always, is
Max Colville.
How are you doing today, Max?
John, I just recently went to the Somerville Theater in Boston, and
Okay.
I saw Streets of Fire on 70 millimeter.
Can I ask you what Streets of Fire is, and
Oh,
not feel like
yes.
an idiot?
Yes, it's this, okay, I won't say it's this excellent, 80s film, because it definitely has its problems.
Okay.
It has Michael Pear and Willem Dafoe, Diane Lane, and the Rick Moranis.
Oh, jeez. Okay, that's not what I thought you were going to say.
Yes, and it's directed by Walter Hill.
Oh,
And
my gosh.
it's just like this goofy fun movie. It's like
Sure.
they call it like a rock and roll fantasy, and what the climactic fight is like William Dafoe and Michael Pear all fight with sledgehammers.
Oh,
And it's
my
just
God.
sledgehammers, really? But
That
yeah,
sounds kind of dope.
yeah, I love the movie, and I was like, a chance to see it in 70 millimeter. I'm not gonna blow that, so I made plans to go to Boston over the
So
weekend.
how could things be bad when you've got that in your life now? Right? That's all that's going on, right? There's nothing else to bring you down, right?
Right, yeah, Streets of
Yeah.
Fire 70 millimeter.
Good. Okay. Well, we all need our pick-me-ups, right? And sometimes it's just a bunch of dudes with sledgehammers and 70 millimeter. All right, cool. So we are going to take it back to, let's say, a better time, maybe, the summer of 1982 with our main feature this week. Perhaps you've read articles about it, Max. Maybe you've contributed to some,
Yeah.
which you could talk about. But this was a sort of seminal year, or I guess season, a couple months back in 40 years ago that did it change movies? Maybe that's something we can kind of put out there and say that's our thesis. The summer of 1982 changed movies, yes or no? And we'll get into some of the titles that may or may not have done that. But that's what we're going to be focusing on primarily this episode. We'll do what we've been watching, as always, at the end. But I guess on the news front, Max, we're almost halfway through 2022. I don't know. I mean, we're only partially through the summer of 2022. I don't think it's quite lived up to its 40 years ago predecessor yet. Maybe that's still to come. But what are sort of your general thoughts on the year as a whole?
Yeah, I think there's been some really strong movies that have come out. Certainly some of my favorites are like Everything Everywhere All at Once and Top Gun Maverick. Certainly those two have really exceeded my expectations in a good way, and both were big box office successes. Obviously, different realms, because Top Gun has recently crossed $1 billion globally, and has become one of the most successful films of the year. Whereas Everything Everywhere All at Once is very successful for its purview, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they're operating on totally different planes, but agree that, I mean, I don't know. Did you see like the Top Gun Maverick thing coming in terms of like how successful it's been? Because I didn't. It totally caught me off guard.
Yeah, not that successful, right? Like you
Yeah.
could say oh yeah, Top Gun's kind of beloved. It's 35 years later, but like even then, it's like who you wouldn't think the audience for this would be people who are like clamoring for the sequel, because like 35 years is a long time.
Yeah, I suspect that people are reacting more to what this movie is than it being like a pure nostalgia kick for older folks. Although that's probably part of it, but it just hit like this really smart sweet spot that I can't recall a movie hitting where it's bringing in everybody because it's got great word of mouth. It's got kind of all of these different not genres, but like audiences kind of like in its pocket, from older folks to younger folks to men and women. I just think that like it's found universality amongst everyone that movies, I mean, besides I guess you can say Marvel, haven't
Well,
done.
John, it goes back to I guess if you have these really successful like military movies too. I mean, that certainly has to play into something with the success of this.
Well, that's fair. I mean, I didn't really think of it in that context. I don't know. Do you think that people are seeing it because, like Hoorah America so much?
There has to be
I
some
know
of
the
it.
old movie, like, kind of like scratched that itch a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it has like American exceptionalism, right? And it's planned Memorial Day weekend, and now it's gonna be still out on July 4th weekend. I mean, it's still 5 weeks later, aiming for the number one spot, and it's just like, wow. Even heading into Fourth of July, I'm sure it will do pretty well. So,
It's really wild.
but outside of that, I think that the year. I think there's been gems here or there, or things that I've enjoyed. One that just came out on Apple that we haven't talked about since the beginning of the year was Cha Cha Real Smooth, and I really enjoyed that earlier this year. That's the Cooper Wraith directed film with Dakota Johnson in it, and I just think that's pretty delightful. And there's a bunch of other stuff that people have latched onto and enjoyed. John, I don't know how many new movies you've seen. Maybe we've talked about Batman and
Yep.
the the weight of massive talent or whatever it is.
Yeah, Unbearable Weight, Massive Talent. I think that was it.
Yes.
I would say, yeah. I mean, certainly not as prolific as you, which is an annual thing, and that's fine. I felt like I was doing a good job for a little while this summer. Like we were talking offline, but I've just been really busy this summer so far, and haven't really been able to keep up, in the same way, especially in June. Like I've been really, really quite hectic, and so I haven't gone to see any of the new movies that have come out. Not that any of them really like. I mean, my thoughts on the Jurassic stuff and Lightyear was
Lightyear,
seemed like
right?
kind of a flop all around. Elvis is intriguing to me because I'm kind of a sucker for Baz Luhrmann. Um, so I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, there hasn't been a ton that I was as excited about. I felt like earlier in the year, like things were on a more exciting trajectory, and maybe they've fallen flat over the last like few weeks. But besides the titles you already mentioned, which I also really enjoyed, the Batman, which I guess you did mention, but is still up there as one of my favorites. And then very very small movie that didn't really even, I don't think it got released, but Kimmy, which was on HBO Max, was something that, depending on how the rest of the year goes, I could imagine kind of hanging around as one of my favorites. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely been good stuff. I feel like 2020 was obviously just a dumpster fire with everything that was going on in the world. 2021 was kind of uneven. I feel like there were some good movies. I didn't really love anything. I'm hoping that we kind of get through to a point where I'm like, there's a stuff coming out like in the fall that I'm just like beyond jazzed about, and that would make me feel good. Well, I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but most of my watching of late has been just older movies and comfort movies. So that's kind of where I'm at. But in other news, we've got a Criterion sale coming up in a few days as of our recording, right?
Yeah, on July 1st is the latest
Friday,
rumor.
I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. What are you sort of most excited to? I mean, new releases, I guess, in theory, that you're excited to pick up.
Yeah, like I missed out on some 4Ks that I was looking forward to, like Double Indemnity, and I guess like
Uh huh.
Shaft just came out in 4K.
Uh
Uh,
huh.
so those two are something that I'm looking forward to, and then some of the newer releases like Drive My Car and The Worst Person in the World. I'd love to have those two
hmm
on Blu-ray. And I believe last episode we talked about Raging Bull on 4K, or at least one of the recent ones, and
We
that's
talked about it when they announced the July lineup, I think,
yeah,
because there was that, and then I think, recommended Devil in a Blue Dress, which
right.
I'm
Looking
super
for that.
excited about. And you, I know, are an Okja fan, whereas I'm not really, but those were all kind of new titles coming out in July. I'm kind of with you. There's like a few things that I think have dropped in maybe the last like 2-3 months that I haven't picked up, kind of waiting around for a half off sale rather than a 30% or whatever. Double Indemnity is probably on that list. I know you were a fan of Mississippi Masala when maybe last we talked.
Yeah, I
Uh,
that's actually coming to the channel next month. So
oh, nice.
if you're kind of hesitant and want to see it first, that's a good chance.
Yeah, yeah. So felt like, I mean, we haven't really done like a big like state of Criterion episode in a while. We used to do those like somewhat regularly. And I feel like it's been a pretty strong year overall, especially with the kind of 4K upgrade, and with that came, and that was in November, but that with that came like some big time titles, and it feels like those are dropping a little bit more regularly than they had for the year or two preceding that. So it's kind of exciting. I guess the most recent Criterion announcement, and these aren't movies that you'll be able to pick up in the sale, but yeah, a week or so ago, they announced the September titles, and among those was Sound of Metal, which was a good, one of the few good 2020 movies. um, so that's kind of cool. And then another one I was super excited about was Exotica, which is Adam Egoyan, I think 1995 movie that's really good.
Yeah,
And have you
I've
seen
never
that?
no, I've never seen Exotica. I think it's on the Criterion channel to stream as well. I might give it
Oh,
a try
nice.
there.
Okay, yeah, you should. You'll like it. It's very good.
But
Um,
John, when you were going to mention Sound of Metal, I thought you would mention that our guest Roxana Haddadi is doing
mm,
the essay for Sound of
yes,
Metal.
you had mentioned that to me. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's pretty
So
exciting.
super excited for her. And do you remember what episode she was on with us?
It was a David Fincher episode, so it
Yes, right.
was.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. I remember we talked about the girl with the dragon tattoo, and I had rewatched it after that, and I really liked that movie. I would say a lot more than I did before we talked about it. So that was a super valuable conversation for me in my David Fincher fandom. But yeah, okay, so that's cool. I'm excited about that. I'm sure I'm going to make more trips to Barnes and Noble than I need to, but what would a July be without those, right?
Right.
Um, any other news that you want to share that you're excited about? Maybe a double exclamation point announcement.
Yeah. So people might have heard that under fives are getting eligible for the COVID vaccines, both Moderna and Pfizer, and I have one of those, an under five child,
Oh, I
and
thought you were saying Moderna vaccine.
no, I'm a Pfizer kid.
Oh, ooh, boo.
But yeah, I'm super excited. Certainly, it will help put my mind at ease a little bit more so than it has been over the past 2.5 so years, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Very good. Well, I am happy for you and parents, and I guess toddlers everywhere. So then that's great because actually, there are some other friends in my life who have been dealing with something similar, and I think are just feeling a lot of relief. Um, so that's good stuff. And if you haven't yet, then get vaccinated yourself. Um, okay, cool. Let's jump backwards in time. Let's do Stranger Things is in the news, right? Have you watched the new Stranger Things?
I have not.
Yeah, neither have I. I'm really finding myself uninspired to do so.
I think like I everybody was ragging on like the run times, and I was just like, I don't have like an hour and a half to watch an episode of
It's
television.
not a barrier for me. It's just I think just kind of apathy. Like I found myself really engaged by the first season of Stranger Things, and then the second one like less so, and the third one less so, and I found myself at the end kind of like just watching obligatorily, and then they had this long gap, and I'm just like, do I need to do that? And my wife feels similarly, so we might just kind of sit this one out. I don't know. We'll see.
I know we're getting off track, John, but it's funny because
Eh,
like I think some people were saying like maybe they should have jumped ahead because the kids got older, and I'm like, well, the whole point of the show is the '80s,
yeah,
so you can't like really leave the '80s.
they could have like gone to Hammer Time.
No,
And we could do what was it, the Gulf War and Hammer Time and Ice Ice Baby and all the fun stuff from like 91, 92.
no,
No, you don't think those kids would have thrived in that era?
no.
Okay, well, fair enough. But even further back than the setting, I think, of Stranger Things was the summer of 1982, and during that year, there was like 8 zillion really awesome and memorable and impactful movies that came out. Do you want to give us like a incomplete list of them?
Yeah, an incomplete list. So, I compiled like I took a when I pitched this to John. It was a few weeks ago, and I was doing my own research of movies that are coming out, and I just um stumbled upon the fact that this was going to be a 40th anniversary for a lot of really fantastic movies. Stuff that has certainly stood the test of time. Whether or not it won awards when it came out or not. Uh, these are films that pretty much defined their genre and continue to find audiences now in 2022. And
A lot of them, I mean, are, well, I wouldn't say a lot of them, but some of them are from like the same genre.
right,
Which is
yes,
like dominant, which is wild.
yes, and of course that genre John is talking about is science fiction. Um, but like the summer season, if you count like May, he started out with like stuff like Arnold Schwarzenegger's big coming out movie Conan the Barbarian. You had Rocky 3, and uh, then you hit June, and this is why it was the perfect time to talk about this in June. You had stuff like Poltergeist and Star Trek 2 Wrath of Khan come out. Then you had E.T., the Extraterrestrial, which was one of the biggest films of that year.
Ever.
Yeah, it
I mean,
certainly,
yeah, certainly like for a while it was.
yeah, and it kind of like made everything else that came out for the rest of the summer kind of like less than because it was
Yeah.
such a big hit. And but that's no fair because like we're recording this on Sunday, and just 2 days ago was the 40th anniversary of the day that Blade Runner and The Thing opened in theaters.
Yeah.
So either way, you were seeing like the best of their respective genres.
It's insanity.
Yeah. Going on for the rest of the month, you had other science fiction hits like Tron, which would have its own legacy sequel years later with Tron
Literally.
Legacy. And, yeah, legacy sequel. You had other cult classics like Pink Floyd's The Wall, Fast Time at Ridgemont High, which has its own Criterion release, and then more entries in Friday the 13th, and I guess another cable TV cult classic, The Beastmaster, which is on Vinegar Syndrome. I watched that for the first time last year, I think, and that's kind of goofy.
Did you mention Rocky 3?
Briefly,
Yeah. I think you forgot also The Road Warrior, which was uh I probably outsized in reputation at least, but I think it did well for the time and like absolutely crushed the original Mad Max. It was kind of like a surprise. Well, I think it was a surprise that they even made another one, but the first Mad Max was not successful in America, at least, and the Road Warrior was very successful.
oh, I didn't.
So
That came out during the summer too. I
it was a
missed that.
May release, so I
Oh,
think
all right.
depending on how you define summer releases at that time, but yeah, it was certainly like just a wild sort of time. And I don't know, let's like revisit some of these big movies. So I know you mentioned like E.T. kind of put all these movies ultimately to, yeah, turn them into dust in terms of like box office and dwarfing what they could ever do because it was just almost incomprehensible how successful it was in 1982. But you watched the movie, I think, recently and wrote a little bit about it. So do you want to talk about sort of your angle there and sort of what you think about ET now, 40 years later? And I'm assuming for you, like it was for me, ET was a movie that like you had on occasionally when you were younger. Um, and I'm kind of curious sort of your relationship with it over, 20, 25 years.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start there and come to the quick conclusion here that I actually avoided ET for a long time.
Oh,
I don't know. I think like my brother had like a stuffed animal of ET, and like that kind of like freaked me out because I was less like ET is not a very comforting looking alien, just
yeah,
like
yeah,
on his
fair.
own. Um, but so I just for the longest time I didn't watch the movie. Um, I remember eventually coming across it and saying, "All right, I guess it's time to make my own opinion on it." and liking it quite a bit. But I think like I wouldn't say it was this time. I think it was like the time before this that I've watched it, and I was just like, "There's the craft of this movie is just impeccable," and like the last 20 minutes is like perfection.
Mm.
um, like they couldn't have done that better. And the John Williams score and Spielberg's direction, and I think it's wonderful. So I've become a big fan of the movie, and certainly it's up there in the upper echelon of Spielberg movies for me. But uh, he's a tough guy to pin down a top five.
Oh, sure. I was gonna say, what did you mean? Because I think his movies are like they fit kind of nicely together, but in terms of like, yeah, deciding what your favorites are, that's certainly a
Yes,
challenge and something that shifts. I think with every new rewatch, right?
yeah, certainly. And when I was doing this article for Pace Magazine, the angle I was using was that recently there was a new Star Wars series coming out, which um, they were discussing what its angle would be, and they were said like it'd be Amblin like, and E.T. is one of the first movies on the Steven Spielberg's Amblin production, and it kind of set the tone for this like specific type of movie. And I go into the article like saying like the Goonies, Super 8, and yes, Stranger Things curb directly from that type of style of movie. Like what things are super important, like but you have to have bicycles
Yeah,
to
right.
have like an Amblin movie, like that's like vital. Or like you had to have these like raging hormones from these like preteen kids, and like how they're like fighting over the lone girl in the group. So they all follow this formula that ET so perfectly um, put together in its movie. And um, yeah, I think ultimately what's special about ET is not just the story about an alien coming and taking the place of this missing father figure in this household, which yeah, that's certainly a theme in a lot of Spielberg's movies because of his own family dynamic.
Mm.
um but I think that it's not afraid to go into dark places, right? uh this movie goes really dark.
Mm.
And I just I think that it needs to go there so that the ultimate joy that you get at the end when ET finally reaches out to his fellow aliens and finds his way home. Um, it just adds that much more emotion to that finale.
Um, I yeah, I haven't watched. It's not a movie I've like revisited as an adult. Um, and I've wanted to for I think a while, and just I don't know. I guess it's something that like I feel like I need to be right in the right sort of like mood, in the right kind of like just that's what I want to watch right now, and I've never quite gotten there. Another Spielberg movie that like I hadn't seen ever actually, that I finally watched like maybe a year ago, and maybe I talked about it on the podcast. I can't remember, but it was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I'd never seen that movie, and I was always just sort of. It was probably like my biggest like blind spot I could think of in terms of movies that like everybody's seen and loves and blah blah blah. And I feel like I actually never saw that. And when I finally watched, I was just like, I think I want to watch this now. And I watched it, and it's just like, oh wow, that's what everybody's been talking about all this time. And I feel like even though I've seen ET and sort of know what happens, it's been so long, and I'm just like, uh, it's just like I'm obviously a very, very different person. So I'm like, how am I going to feel about that? And I sort of know how I'm going to feel about it, but I'm just like nervous to put it on at the wrong time and not feel those things. So your Amblin thing is really interesting. It's funny that there were movies that were doing this like in its own present, like E.T., which is I think set in the present time, and then years later, like they're making them about that as the past, and it's just sort of like a thing that feels like maybe it's timeless to an extent, but it's also not overdone, so that when something like Stranger Things comes along, it feels like novel and fun, and you're like, oh yeah, I love that. I love how it feels like old times and blah blah blah. Now with how successful that show has been, you wonder like, are there going to be more properties that kind of try to do that? Which I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. But I like the angle, and I think I like ET. I just haven't seen it in
Yeah.
probably like 28 years.
Yeah, it's funny when I was doing my research, I came upon a lot of different things that were really fun trivia about ET, and like how at the beginning of that movie, it's very obvious that the lead child's older brother is playing D&D with his friends, and I guess apparently they had reached out to the creators of D&D or whoever hold the rights at that time, and they were like, yeah, we don't know what this movie is, and you can't say D&D in the movie.
Oh, so
So
funny.
so it's like it's very obvious that they're playing D&D, but they can't like say it by
One of
name.
the great missed product placements of all time.
Well, that, and I think another one was like, I guess M&Ms were supposed to be the candy ET.
Oh, interesting. But they went to Reese's Pieces.
Yeah, because M&M's didn't want to do it or something.
Funny.
And it's just like Reese's Pieces like blasted off after that movie.
Like a marketing person somewhere just got fired. It's funny. Cool. Well, so that's ET. That was certainly the biggest movie of the summer in question here. The next biggest was Rocky 3. And have you ever seen Rocky 3?
Oh, of course I've seen Rocky 3.
Oh, have you? Because I haven't.
You haven't?
No, I haven't. I'm like Rocky is again like also like a little bit of a blind spot. Like I've seen the first one, but I didn't see any of the other sequels up until they made like Rocky Balboa or whatever in 2006, and then obviously the two Creed movies. But I've never seen any of the like proper like Roman numeraled Rocky sequels.
Okay, I've seen every Rocky movie.
Okay, should I? I mean, I should probably do that sometime, right? I know it's like diminishing returns as you go on, but
Yeah, I mean 5 is the absolute worst.
yeah.
But everything else has like some something that's at least worth watching.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I need to sort of make time for. But I can't say too much about Rocky 3. Another thing that I should probably make time for sometime is finishing the Star Trek movies that I started watching, I think, early on in COVID. And the third biggest movie financially of the summer of 82 is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Now, I have seen that movie, I've seen it multiple times. So I'm fairly well versed, and I know you're pretty well versed in it as well.
Yeah, I watched it the other night again in anticipation of talking about the summer of '82.
Can you kind of talk us through sort of the setup?
Yeah, sure. So it was coming off of Star Trek One, the first motion picture, which reunited the cast from the original show. You know, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy.
And can I
As
say that like Star Trek the motion picture totally slaps?
you like that?
I think it's awesome. I love
I
it.
think it's like so boring.
I like it actually a lot more than this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do actually.
Oh, that's surprising because yeah, I like I said, I think I find the original kind of boring, and it's very obvious like they were trying to um kind of like use the same ideas from 2001: A Space Odyssey, like
Yeah,
try to go in that same like kind of spacey direction.
that's
Um
accurate.
but it depends. I guess your mileage may vary because John loves it. Um, but Wrath of Khan has everyone come back. But this time, Shatner's character, Kirk, is a admiral, and he's kind of like retired from active duty. Um, that's not going to do for this movie.
Obviously.
He is doing an inspection of the Enterprise when he is hailed by a past foe. The foe is named Khan, And I guess in one of the episodes in the original series, I think the episode is called Demon Seed. Although I have some um, experience watching those older episodes, I don't know if I know this episode. Nevertheless, Kirk had left Khan and his relatives or clan to perish on a planet with little means of survival. I guess like maybe he thought like he was just exiling them and they had some chance to survive, but Khan sees it differently. He feels like um, he was left there to die. So his whole raison d'etre is to get revenge on Captain Kirk, and in order to do that, not only will he destroy Kirk, but he will try to claim this experimental weapon known as the Genesis missile, which does exactly what it sounds like. And when it's aimed at a planet, it kind of terraforms the planet and then reinstalls new life forms and onto the planet and starts it all over again. And you can imagine how a weapon like that could be used for good and how it could easily be used for bad. So they go at it at one another, and I love Wrath of Khan. I think it. I think mostly I agree with like some of the ideas that like the even numbered Star Trek movies
Yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
really good, and the odd ones aren't so much.
I mean, when I was watching them, I think I told you I got up like to the fifth one maybe, and I've obviously seen like other ones I think here and there, but never like I've never completed the whole series, but the fourth one was like just so good. I loved the fourth one. It was just the one where they have to save the whales and they go
Right.
back in time
Yeah.
to San Francisco in the 80s.
Yeah. That it's fantastic.
It's so
Um,
funny.
Voyage Home.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
But yeah, but two would famously end with 40 years later. Spoilers. Spock died. That kind of got messed up when they made the next movie, which was
The
entitled
search
Search for
for Spock.
Spock.
Yeah.
And then famously, J.J. Abrams kind of remade Wrath of
Oh god.
Khan indirectly with Star Trek Into Darkness.
And destroyed the new franchise.
Yeah, pretty
I mean,
much.
it was just awful. And yeah, I mean they they gave like no money to do the next one, and now I don't know, either Quentin Tarantino does the fourth one or nobody, I guess.
No,
Uh,
the most recent thing there was like in April. They were like, "Oh, they're definitely gonna have a new one with the what's his name, Chris Pine
Chris Pine.
cast," and but they didn't tell the cast that they were
Oh
planning
yeah,
to do a
I
new one,
remember that.
so they
Right.
like have to renegotiate all the contracts with like knowing that Paramount wants to do this. So
Well, now Paramount has loads of money from Top Gun Maverick, so they can make it work, I guess. Oh my gosh, that's wild. Yeah, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I definitely liked it more the second time I watched it, which was the sort of most recent time. The first time I was just kind of I found it like kind of boring, to be honest with you. Which is weird because I told you I liked the first one and never really found that boring. But I think I appreciate it definitely more the second time, and I think you know it, it's probably better than the first movie. I don't think it's as good as the boom boxes in San Francisco. Like that is just so funny. I remember just like rolling around laughing when I first saw that. But yeah, no, it's a good movie. It's certainly like I don't think the first one was like super successful financially, so maybe it was like a little surprising they did this, and then this was like obviously a huge hit, and now they're still making Star Trek movies because of it.
yeah, and it's funny. Like certainly, you say Voyage Home is very funny. I think like Wrath of Khan is probably like the best serious
Yeah, yeah, for
Star
sure.
Trek movie.
Yeah,
As serious as Star Trek gets, I think, because like some of the later movies, certainly with the Next Generation crew, are very silly.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But this is there's an inherent silliness with it, but Shatner always obviously plays it very straight. And Ricardo Montalban was basically like a TV actor who did this role on TV, and then they brought him in, and it's kind of iconic.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, like he's like the most famous Star Trek villain. I mean, hands down.
No question.
So
Cool. All right. So that was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Let's skip down a little bit. I mean, you mentioned Blade Runner and The Thing coming out on the same day, which was June 25th. Can you think of any other instances of like two like sort of iconic movies coming out on the same day? I mean, I'm sure there are, but like really like all-timers coming out on the same day?
it's tough to really, unless I like did like extensive
I know
research,
it's hard to do like off the top of your head, but
but
it's just
I would find it
it's so
really
wild.
difficult. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think The Thing is up there with my top three favorite horror movies.
yeah.
Even though it's both like science fiction and horror, and then like Blade Runner is definitely also in my top three science fiction films. So
Which of these two movies, if you had to like just choose one, which one are you choosing?
I like Blade Runner more.
Okay, I'm definitely choosing The Thing. Should we fight it out?
I don't
I mean,
think that's a
metaphorically,
battle
with
worth
words, with
having.
words, with words. What would you say?
This is not an argument worth having because they're
Okay,
both
fair enough.
excellent
Because they're
films.
both wonderful. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not like obviously the biggest Blade Runner fan, but it's a very good movie. I just think I don't think that it's like I'm probably more down on it than like 90% of people, and I still really like it. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense at all. Because it wasn't like this big hit at first, and like Ridley Scott's
Yeah,
like played with it for like five different cuts to finally get it where like everyone's like, oh yeah, this is definitely a good movie,
yeah, which is
and
insane. Yeah, it's wild. How about I'll put it a different way? Of like all the people who have letterboxed accounts, I probably have given it like in the lowest 10 to 15 percentile of my rating for it, and that's still probably like 4 stars or whatever.
okay, that's more fair.
Okay, fair enough. But the thing is a 5 star classic. I think it is just like I don't I mean me in horror movies, right? We've if you're listening to this podcast 135 episodes in, you probably know that I'm not the biggest horror fan, but the thing, as gross as it is sometimes, is just like the dopest movie ever. And I just remember watching it and getting to the end, and I think is it Keith David and Kurt Russell?
Yeah, I think so.
Spoiler alert, sitting there, and I'm just like, dang, like that, what a ride. There's so many like scenes, and it's not even like just the grossest stuff, but just like the people kind of like on edge, ready to tear each other apart, and how good that is. I think it's it was not like super well received at the time. It was not a financial hit. It's just a pure like movie that got by on on a sort of cult following and has been properly reevaluated probably a dozen times over since then. And now I think has earned its plot place, in that way, not unlike Blade Runner, but
Right, yeah,
um,
both similar.
similar trajectories for sure, for sure. But yeah, I just think it's tremendous. Do you ever see the remake?
No,
It's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate movie.
is it like a really strict remake, or is it more like a prequel, or
No, it is a remake. It is
oh?
just doing the thing.
I,
And
I've
there's some.
I've seen the original, the the the
Oh, is
original
it?
of the thing.
Okay, I think I knew that it was an old. Is this like one of the old like Universal monster movies or something?
I think so, but like it's funny, John, because I think Carpenter, John Carpenter, who's the director of the thing, he chose the classic The Thing in Halloween, like on the television.
Oh,
Um,
that's so funny. Actually didn't know that. That's
yeah,
wild.
so then he ends up doing a remake of it. So
Yeah, seriously. That's really funny. Huh. Very cool. Um, all right. So what are some any other titles you want to talk about in depth here? I mean, Tron is kind of fun. I saw that. I remember before the Legacy sequel came out. And I thought it was a pretty fun, goofy 80s movie.
yeah, certainly it's another one that like had a cult following because like the technology that it came out with was really cool,
Yeah.
and people hadn't really seen something like that,
Yeah.
and Uh, it took a long time to make a sequel, obviously, and
It's wild that they did, and Disney did it. It's just sort of like, why, like, was anybody kind of clamoring for that? I wouldn't think so.
I mean, I was psyched as hell, and then they had like
Oh, I
Daft
was
Punk.
psyched. I guess I was psyched too, but I was just like how does somebody decide? Oh, now it's time to do another Tron movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like when they do it, it's like, oh, that sounds kind of cool, and then you see the movie, and it's like, oh, that was kind of cool, I guess.
yeah, they did, like I was saying, they did the Daft Punk score for
Yeah,
the
that was
Tron
cool.
Legacy. Yeah, that was really cool. Um,
For
I,
sure.
I
I,
I
I
think
dug that.
the director of Top Gun Maverick directed Tron Legacy.
Oh,
So
did he? Oh,
yeah,
yeah, Kaczynski. Yeah, I think you're right. Cool. One movie I've never seen this, but it kind of stands out. It's like a little bit unique, I think, amongst the rest of these. But An Officer and a Gentleman. Have you seen that?
I've seen it once,
Uh huh.
but like it was funny because it didn't like really like scream at me like I didn't remember it all that well.
Yeah.
Like it's a Richard Gere movie.
Right.
But like it made a lot of money if you look at like the box office
I
charts.
didn't let Lou Gossett Jr. win an Oscar for that movie.
I think so.
I think he did. I think he did. Any other titles you want to discuss or mention that didn't get their due here?
No, I think like when I watched Conan the Barbarian
We
last year,
talked about that. Yeah, I
I
remember when you
talked
did.
about that a little bit. That movie's pretty cool. Uh, yeah, and like I put Fast Time in Ridgemont High here. I know a lot of people probably have strong feelings about that one. I think I've only seen it once, and it's okay for me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it too when I saw it. But um, maybe it belongs to like a specific age group in a way that we can't totally appreciate. I don't know, just
Yeah,
speculating.
uh,
But
but yeah, it was a fantastic summer. I know. Normally, we reserve our flashback episodes for like we've been doing 20 years
yeah,
in the past. But I thought this one was a particularly good thing to go on. It seems like John has already answered the question of what of the summer of '82 movies would probably be his favorite.
yeah, for sure. If you are surprised, you shouldn't be. It's the thing for sure.
I guess the one on this list that we didn't talk about too much was Poltergeist.
I've never seen Poltergeist, so yeah, it's like a horror blind spot. But do you have an opinion on that movie?
Yeah, I think it's excellent,
Oh, cool.
John.
Okay.
I think that you would actually enjoy it because it's not super scary like some horror movies. Certainly, like if we were putting it against the Thing, I think the Thing is much scarier than Poltergeist.
Yeah.
But the idea of the movie is like this family moves into a house and just crazy things start happening around the house. And if you've seen like The Conjuring, it's kind of like that. And they end up hiring like supernatural investigators to like see what's going on with the house. And famously, the movie is directed by Toby Hooper, who directed Texas
Right.
Chainsaw Massacre. But there's long been rumors that since Spielberg was involved with Poltergeist, that some people almost consider Poltergeist to be Spielberg's movie. Um,
Interesting.
and you could see some of his touches on the film for sure. Um, I think that one is. I just saw the other day that they're gonna do a new 4K release for it, like September October. I guess 40th anniversary is a good time to do it. I like it quite a bit. I've never seen the second and third one, but um, yeah, the first Poltergeist is pretty cool. I think that uh, I think you should watch it, John.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I would. It sounds like a horror type of horror movie that I can probably embrace more so than some others. But yeah, cool. I haven't seen it. I did pull up. You mentioned like we normally go 20. We've been. I shouldn't say we normally do, but for the last few years we've kind of gone backwards 20 years to talk about the year as we remember it. I pulled up the summer of. I actually pulled up 30 years ago too. The summer of '92 and the summer of 2002, just to kind of contextualize. I think how notable '82 was, but '92 like really only has a couple like memorable movies. I would say Batman Returns. It was the biggest moneymaker, and I think holds up. I watched it fairly recently, and I thought it was just a lot of fun. Sister Act, which I think is pretty fun. Definitely a movie that a lot of people have fond memories of, and A League of Their Own, which I think, is really good also. Was a great, certainly would be a great summer movie. And then Unforgiven came out in the summer of 1992, which ended up being the year's Best Picture winner. Other than that, it's really kind of like a bummer of a year.
John, did you know that the Amazon's doing a League of Their Own television
I
series?
did not. I did not. That doesn't sound very fun to me.
It's headlined by Broad City's Abby Jacobson. So,
I don't. I'm not super familiar.
oh, well, hopefully it's good. I mean, I also really enjoy A League of Their Own. I think it's a very
Yes.
special
Yeah.
movie. So,
Very good. And then 2002 was the first Spider-Man movie, which I also watched fairly recently, and held up like a ton. I was shocked actually because I wasn't like wild about the first Spider-Man movie. The second one obviously is just insanely good, but the first one was kind of like, yeah, okay, like cool Spider-Man. But I really loved it when I watched it recently. And then the other big movie was Star Wars 2: Attack of the Clones, which is the best of the prequels at the very least. But you also had Minority Report, which I think is a great Spielberg movie, another summer classic. And then The Bourne Identity came out that summer, which was kind of a fun throwback, I guess, and ended up spawning a pretty popular franchise over the next 10 years. So not as deep as the summer of 82. I guess maybe a little bit better than 92, but just, to have so many really truly classic movies, I would say, come out within a 3.5 roughly month period is wild. And I'm glad we got to talk about that.
John, just one more trivia to throw at you. When I was looking up recent box office things, and with Top Gun Maverick coming out, I think they said like E.T. is one of the highest grossing films to never have a sequel.
Oh, sure,
And
that makes sense.
I think at one point they were like thinking about it, and
Jesus.
like they just never put pen to paper, which is it's good because that story is over. But
What do they do? ET phones Earth.
yeah, yeah, he comes back, and
I want to talk to my friends.
yeah.
That's funny. Um, okay, cool. So I guess we'll sort of shift over to what we've been watching, but before we do that, we'll let you know how you can follow us. On Twitter, our podcast is at It's the Pick Pod, and Max, you're at.
MH Colville.
And on Facebook, you can like us, our page, just search for It's the Pictures. You can also send us an email at itsthepictures@gmail.com with your thoughts on the summer of 82. You can let us know what your favorite movies of the first half of 2022 were, maybe what you're excited about for the rest of the year. So we have things that we can be excited about as well. But you can also follow us on Letterboxd. Just search for It's a Pictures and see what we've been watching and what we'll be talking about. You can also subscribe to our newsletter on Substack at itsapictures.substack.com. And what have you been writing about of late, Max?
Yeah, other than just like letting people know what I've been watching, I did 2 new animation reviews. One for this movie called um I think it's my love affair of marriage, and it's this film that played 3 different festivals recently. Tribeca and the Annecy Animation Film Festival are the 2 that come off the top of my head. That review is there. Pretty entertaining movie. The next review I did was of Fruits Basket Prelude, which is a movie that kind of exists at the end of the Fruits Basket anime series. Um, and in my review, I pretty much say if you haven't watched every episode of the anime, then this movie is not for you. So
So
very
no good for me.
yeah, very very small audience for that one.
Fair enough. Um, Finally, I neglected to mention where I normally do, but you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts and any other podcatching app. Just search for It's a Pictures, and while you're there, leave us a review. 5 stars will help other people discover and enjoy the show. Anything else that I neglected there, Max?
No, but I think we need to take Facebook out of there. I don't manage Facebook anymore because I don't use it myself anymore. So
Okay, well, that certainly makes two of us, so we
so,
can
so,
do that.
so don't go to Facebook. Go to like Letterboxd or Instagram or Twitter. I will certainly find you there.
Happier places.
Yes.
Okay, very good. What have we been watching lately? I'll go first. I've been watching some heist movies. I don't have really a strong reason why I've been wanting to watch heist movies, but they just feel right for me right now. So I watched a couple of heist movies that I like. One of them is The Town. I guess they both are Ben Affleck movies too. Maybe I was really on a Ben Affleck kick and I didn't realize. But The Town is just a really dope heist movie from 2010. It's directed by Ben Affleck and it stars Ben Affleck and Jeremy Renner, Rebecca Hall, and set in Boston. So a hometown movie for you, roughly. And I don't know. I mean, you've seen The Town, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that The Town is sort of like a modern kind of like heist classic, or is it a little bit like under the radar?
It's more under the radar now. I
Yeah,
think I think Ben Affleck had a really good string of
yeah.
directorial movies, Gone Baby Gone, The Town, and his winning
Then
Argo
Argo.
movie.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Like he kind of dropped off after that, and he became Batman, and there was lots of tabloid stuff, and then he got drunk when he went on Bill Simmons's talk show, and that was all like a kind of a weird stretch for old Ben Affleck. Um, but the town has such like a great hook where he's like doing the heist, him and his like old Charlestown buddies. Did I say Charlestown right, or is it Charles? It's Charlestown.
It might be Charleston.
I'm pretty sure it's like they say Charlestown,
All
but I could
right.
be wrong.
I'm
And
I'm 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 not really super Boston
well,
either,
that's
even though
true.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
closer.
you're Boston adjacent.
Yes.
Um, but anyway, while they're robbing a bank, they take a hostage. One of the workers there, who is Rebecca Hall, and she's unharmed, but obviously terrified by the incident. So then Ben Affleck, who's kind of the main character here, finds out that she actually lives in his neighborhood, and he's following her to sort of see like if she's if that he needs to be worried, and also kind of making sure that she doesn't get knocked off by Jeremy Renner, who's like the frightening member of the crew. And as he kind of like actually like introduces himself to her and spends a little bit of time with her, he starts to fall in love with her, but doesn't want to admit that to anybody. And so he's kind of like balancing this, which is like wanting to make sure that she never finds out who he is at really, and making sure that his crew never finds out that he's taken an interest in her that's beyond professional. So that's the hook of the movie. John Hamm is in the movie as sort of like the lead investigator for the FBI. I think kind of a thankless role. I remember seeing this movie and like when it came out, and I really liked it, but I remember being a little bit disappointed that like John Hamm doesn't have anything to do that's interesting. But it's probably the only sort of like weak point. Otherwise, it's very exciting, and the heist, they get to dress up like as nuns, which is kind of a fun, yeah, memorable images. And I really like the town. It's great. The heist that occurs later in the movie is at Fenway Park,
Yes, it is. I remember
which
that.
is really cool. So yeah, good movie. It's his like second directorial effort, I guess. And you're right, like it was three movies that started out, I would say, very good, and kind of built and built and built, and then went off a little bit of a cliff. So yeah, so I watched The Town, and then the other movie I watched was Triple Frontier, which I found out right before we recorded is a movie that uh, you don't like.
No, honestly I don't even
You probably
remember
haven't
it
even thought
well.
about it, right? I'm guessing, yeah. I mean, it's just like kind of forgettable. I don't think that the fact that like it came out on Netflix helped, because those movies just get disposed of really quickly.
Wait,
Um,
no, then maybe I didn't see this.
oh, okay.
Yeah, because like I thought like it was some other movie. I think I'll get back to you, and you talk about the movie, and I'll tell you what other movie I thought it was.
Okay, so this movie was it was written by and it was directed by J.C. Chandor, who you might know from having directed. He did Margin Call. That was his first movie, which I think is really good. And he also did All Is Lost, the Robert Redford on a boat by himself movie. And then what was the movie he did after that, which was really good? Oh, the A Most Violent Year. That was like his, like Ben Affleck. He had three like huge movies, and I think you could argue they all got better than the rest. I think I like Margin Call the best, but anyway, after that, he sort of like disappeared for a little while and ended up kind of coming back with Triple Frontier, which is this project that was like languishing in developmental hell forever. And it was written by Mark Bowl, who is the screenwriting partner of Catherine Bigelow. And she was supposed to make this right after she made The Hurt Locker, but ended up doing Zero Dark 30 instead, and never came back to this movie. And then it was, yeah, like kind of, kicked around and kicked around and kicked around. Tom Hanks was going to be in it, then Johnny Depp was going to be in it, then Will Smith was going to be in it. J.C. Chandor signed on to do it as the director, but that was it. Still kind of like wasn't getting made for a while. And then finally, Ben Affleck kind of took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and decided he was going to help produce it. Then he actually, I'm reading, he like disappeared from it for a little while and left the project, but came back later. Um, his co-stars are Oscar Isaac, Pedro Pascal, who I saw most recently in the Nick Cage movie that we talked about, and then Charlie Hunnam and Garrett Hedlund. And one of the problems I think with the movie is that Charlie Hunnam and Garrett Hedlund are the same person. I don't mean this literally in that they play like similar characters or something like that. I mean that they are impossible to tell each other apart. And that is a little bit challenging for a movie that is really about like a bunch of, macho ex-military guys doing a heist in South America, and they're supposed to have like kind of unique personalities, and the two guys, you can't tell them apart. But that's for me a small quibble. I think it's a fun movie. It's like a really unusual heist movie just because I think of the setting and like some of the things that they need to do in order to like get the loot. And then there's kind of like a big moral quandary that comes in in like the sort of second to third act twist. Um, so I think like all that stuff is pretty compelling. It's not like groundbreaking in any sort of way. I mean, the town really isn't either, but I think the town is just kind of like a tighter, more satisfying movie. But I think Triple Frontier like accomplishes a lot of sort of what you want it to. And I think that like if it didn't have the pedigree that I guess it does, like where it's going to be like the follow up to an Oscar winning movie, has an Oscar winning screenwriter, has a really like kind of talented young director, like if it was sort of a movie that just kind of came up and came out, I think people would have been more jazzed for it. But then it was this big thing that everybody sort of I think knew about, and then Netflix released it in March to like very little fanfare, and it just came and went. But I think it holds up. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed rewatching it. Is this the movie that you saw or no?
It is not.
Okay. What is the movie that you thought I was talking about?
I thought it was this movie called Triple Nine,
Oh,
and
it's not.
it was
What is that
directed.
movie?
It's directed by John Hillcoat and stars Casey Affleck and
Oh,
Chiwetel
jeez.
Ejiofor and Anthony
Okay.
Mackie.
Yeah, okay. I vaguely remember that. I don't think I ever saw that movie.
And the movie's like its synopsis is like a gang of criminals and corrupt cops plan to the murder of a police officer in order to pull off their biggest heist yet across the town.
Okay, so another heist movie with the word triple in the
And
title that
Affleck.
nobody seems to remember. And an Affleck. Okay, great.
So I
Yeah.
wasn't that far off.
No, you really weren't. Like that's totally valid. Okay, cool. So those are my what I've been watching lately, and I know you want to talk a little bit about Obi-Wan.
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned Attack of Clones, which I
I,
actually think is my least favorite of the
I
prequel
know,
movies.
I know. You're wrong, but that's fine. We should do
Um,
another episode and talk about it some more.
sure. Um, but yeah, I watched Obi-Wan because I for some reason I was excited. I think it's because I like Ewan McGregor's take on Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think that I just like that character. I like him as an actor, and I was kind of excited to see what he could do with it. And yeah, I was sucked in with the idea that Hayden Christensen was coming back. Like, oh, this is kind of cool, and like kind of forgetting that like he's Darth Vader and he doesn't get to like really be seen all that much. So it doesn't really matter who is Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I guess they did work him in some other scenes, so you do get to see Hayden Christensen, the actor, without the Vader mask on. So it matters a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah. So the catch of this 6 episode side story is that 10-year-old Princess Leia has been kidnapped, and Obi-Wan is tasked by the Organa family to go track her down and return her safely. And meanwhile, there's this a group of underlings under Darth Vader known as the Inquisitors, who are just trying to find Obi-Wan and do Vader's bidding for him. And so they're the new like big bads in this show, other than Vader himself.
The
And
Inquisitors were in like the Clone Wars animated show, weren't they?
I think so, but I've never seen Clone Wars,
I haven't
and
either. I'm just like vaguely familiar with that as like an idea, I think.
yeah, that's something like it seems like current Star Wars lore is borrowing a lot from the
Yeah.
Clone Wars
Yeah,
series,
I think you're
and it's
right.
just like as much as I like animated things, I don't know if I'm gonna go back and watch Clone Wars
Yeah, I
um,
get you.
to know all these characters. Um, but for the most part, I liked it. But John, I bet it doesn't surprise you to know that the biggest problem I had with it is that there's no like drama because everything that's important happens to these characters in later things.
Oh my god, like classic prequel problems?
But even more so, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like there's certain situations where like oh Vader and Obi-Wan are like fighting and it's very clear that they could like take each other out, but it's like we know when that actually happens, so it can't happen
Yeah.
here. Um, or
Stop filling
like
in
if you
gaps. No
think
one
this,
cares. It's stupid. It's so
or if like
annoying.
it's like oh no, Princess Leia is in trouble. Like what's gonna happen to her? Oh wait, that's right. Yeah, she lives for like 7 more movies.
Yeah.
Um, it's just like as much as it's fun to like see these characters do other things, and like Star Wars in general is always going to be kind of fun with like
Yeah,
lightsabers
I
and
agree. Yeah.
blasters and in the world. It's just like I don't know. I need stories where the outcome isn't predetermined, and they try to like add characters to the story, and like on the one hand you're like, well, these characters don't exist in the other movies, so you're like
Yeah.
something has to happen to them that makes it so that they don't
Yeah.
exist in the other
Okay, so they're
movies.
gonna be dead. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I I was excited for this when they announced. I was like, "Oh, that sounds kind of fun," you know. Even though, yeah, I guess I sort of knew like we were gonna run into the same thing that we always do with these prequels and whatevers that are just like going backwards in time with characters that we know what happens to them after the fact. But I guess like I didn't really know what it was ultimately going to be about, and I was kind of turned off, and it was like, oh, there's like a young thing in trouble that like an older character must like shepherd them to safety, because that's been basically every single freaking Star Wars TV show on Disney Plus.
right, yeah, that's like Mandalorian 101.
Yeah, so I was just like, oh wow, we're doing that like basic thing again. Okay. Um, but whatever. I'm sure I'll watch it at some point. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, and I mean like it's very clear that like this before like the Solo movie bombed and like they were doing like they were going to do movies for everybody. Like there was going to be an Obi-Wan movie, and this very
And a Boba
well,
Fett. Yeah.
yeah, these things very well could have fit into like movie format, and um, mixed results there too, probably. But
Yeah. Like, are these breaking through in any sort of way? I feel like there's, and I'm not on social media anymore, so it's like I really don't know. But I just feel like in my real life, like nobody has ever mentioned Obi-Wan the show to me.
no, I think like on Twitter, or at least if that's what we're going by, I think it was trending all day that when the finale came out.
Okay, well that's something. Yeah, that's fair.
Um,
Okay.
so I think that people were at least excited for that story to continue, and I think I had talked to somebody, and it's like Ewan McGregor is probably like one of the most acclaimed or noticeable actor to do one of these, like to go into like the TV show realm
Uh-huh.
from like one of the Star Wars movies or like the Marvel movies, right? Because like a lot of the Marvel things have been like, oh,
Yeah.
Scarlet Witch and
Yeah. Yeah.
and like character and Hawkeye, like characters you really don't care about.
Yep.
Um, but like Obi-Wan Kenobi is someone that most people probably care about. So
Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
I think that was a pretty high profile thing that they decided to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally valid. And like I said, I'm sure I'll watch it. It's just to me, it wasn't like necessarily appointment TV. So, all right. Well, I think that's gonna just about wrap things up. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think I was worried that we weren't going to do a regular length episode, but we did pretty well today.
We always kind of figure out how to chat our way to an hour plus. But yeah, no, this is good. This is fun. We thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you again soon.
Bye.